Hail, fellow travelers. Tim from Secret Fire Books here. Welcome to another Random Book Wednesday. This week's random book is Dilvish the Damned by Roger Zelazny. This is a fix-up novel published in 1982, and it collects all of these short stories that Roger Zelazny wrote about this character, Dilvish the Half-Elf. Now, these stories are traditional sword and sorcery, at the very least as traditional as Roger Zelazny tended to get, and they were printed in numerous fiction magazines throughout the 1960s and 70s. Then, in 1981, Zelazny wrote a Dilvish novel, The Changing Land, which wrapped up the storyline. And a year later, the original stories were compiled into this fix-up. So, in this case, we have a rare occurrence of Book 2 being published before Book 1, technically. Now, I've talked about these books a few times in passing here on the channel, but I've never given them their own dedicated video. And I need to fix that, because I want more people to read the Dilvish series. At the very least, I want them to read the first book. We'll get to the second book in a minute. Now, what really got me to read the Dilvish series was the premise. I will give Roger Zelazny one thing. Even when I'm not really getting along with his writing style, I can see that he had an enormous creative talent, and that is very much on display in the short stories in Dilvish the Damned. The premise is absolutely bonkers. We start off with this half-elf hero, Dilvish. He is a folk hero. He has already done all of the amazing things that fantasy heroes usually do. He's led armies to victory. He's rescued kingdoms. He's saved princesses. He's killed evil dragons and monsters and all that kind of stuff. Then one day, Dilvish is traveling along and he meets a wizard named Jelarak. He fights Jelarak, and he is immediately defeated by Jelarak. This wizard casts a spell on him that turns his body into stone and immediately sends his soul straight to hell. Hence the title, Dilvish the Damned. And so for 200 years, Dilvish is trapped in hell, being tortured by demons and plotting his revenge. Now, thankfully, he is able to befriend another inmate in hell, this entity that only refers to itself as Black. And it seems that Black also has some previous beef with Jelarak as well. So the two of them work together to escape hell, and they do just that. When they return to the mortal world, Dilvish's stone body is returned to a body of flesh, and Black is incarnated as this giant fire-breathing metal horse that you see here on the cover for The Changing Land. And so the two of them team up and travel across these far-flung fantasy worlds in order to find Jelarak and exact their revenge. And following those characters is a lot of fun, because Dilvish and Black are both very interesting. Dilvish in himself he could very easily be your typical generic sword and sorcery hero, but he's got some depth to him. He has a bit of a jaded personality. Like I said, he's done all the big, grand, heroic fantasy things before. He's seen it all, he's done it all. So he has this kind of jaded approach to everything. He acts real casual, no matter what kind of dire circumstance he's in. On the other hand, Black is this kind of intellectual, I don't really know what to call him. I was going to say he's a demon, but it's not ever really made clear what he is. He's just this mysterious magical entity that takes the form of this giant metal horse. And he has a bunch of magical spells. I should point out that the way Dilvish plans to get revenge on his enemy, Jelarak, is by memorizing these various spells that he learned while he was being tortured in hell for 200 years. Now, these spells are incredibly powerful, and if they're spoken aloud in the mortal world, they will warp the very fabric of the universe. They're incredibly powerful magic spells, and so he plans to use these on his adventures to find Jelarak and take him down, and exact some excruciating vengeance on him. And so the stories that we get with these two characters are very interesting, and they're very wild and creative in that Roger Zelazny style. We have traditional sword and sorcery narratives. The structure of each of these stories is very kind of generically sword and sorcery, but just every once in a while we get this one element, this one character, or this one monster, or this one location that's just mind-bogglingly weird, as Roger Zelazny tends to put into his stories. They're a lot of fun, and there is really nothing bad that I can say about the first book, Dilvish the Damned. The only thing that I can really criticize is the fact that we don't get any resolution with this first book. In order to get any kind of resolution, you have to move on to Book 2. And Book 2 is kind of a disappointment. The thing is, The Changing Land starts off really well, but at about the halfway point, it really starts to fall flat. I don't think Zelazny knew what direction he was taking the story. The tone is all over the place. It's like he couldn't decide if it wanted to be a straight-up epic fantasy or some kind of fantasy satire. We're getting a bunch of different points of views from a bunch of different characters that really don't matter ultimately to the plot. And worst of all, the ending is incredibly anticlimactic. Things are happening. The world is changing around our characters. Big, crazy, eldritch magic is going on. But it just feels like kind of a letdown. I don't want to get too into spoilers, but the vengeance that we were expecting Black and Dilvish to get doesn't really happen the way you'd want it to. It kind of feels like Roger Zelazny subverted our expectations in all the worst ways. So while I can't really recommend The Changing Land, I still heartily recommend Dilvish the Damned. Just know that going into this book, you won't get any kind of resolution at the end. There is no culmination to these stories unless you read the subpar, in my opinion, Changing Land. Now, my 3 favorite short stories in this book are without a doubt, where's the table of contents here? Yes, The Bells of Shoridan, The Tower of Ice, and The Devil and the Dancer. I think those are the 3 best short stories in this collection. Give it a shot, and who knows, maybe you'll like The Changing Land more than I did. For me, it just kind of fell flat. But that's all for now, guys. Let me know in the comments, have you read any of the Dilvish books? What did you think of them? Whatever the case, I hope you'll join me for the next random book review. Until then, as always, farewell and keep reading.